Andrea Gould has been an educator for 21 years. She's taught mathematics to thousands of middle and high school students in the Bay Area, from at-risk students to AP students. She coaches high school math teachers in San Mateo Union High School District, where she's also the math program coordinator. Andrea also serves as the president of the Board of Trustees of the Pacifica Elementary School District. Please join me in welcoming Andrea Gould to the stage.
Didn't even have to put up my own technology here, except I was told to eat the mic. These are the instructions that we were given yesterday, so I can try. So, good afternoon. It was good lunch. Now we're all ready to kind of sit and get for about an hour, and hopefully that will work for all of us. So, as Jen said, I've been in education for 21 years, and you would think that I've seen it all, but I haven't. There's always new things that come about as you're in education with children, as most of you know. So 19 years as a classroom teacher in mostly high school. I learned about adolescent psychiatry, learned about pop culture, group dynamics, and I also learned a lot of math. I thought I knew math when I came out of getting a bachelor's in mathematics. I learned a heck of a lot more just being in the classroom. For 5 years, I've been coaching teachers and developing programs for our district. And in doing that, I've learned how to listen, negotiate, make decisions. And I also learned that we teachers make terrible students. You'll know what I mean if you ever start doing professional development for your district. When people meet me and they ask me what I do, I say that I teach high school math. And the usual response is, why would you want to teach high school? Ugh. But I tell them it's an honorable profession. And it's not just the honor that keeps me going. It is also the challenge. It's a great intellectual challenge to be in the classroom every day, where you always get new problems, kids in crisis, increased demands from your administrator about doing more work and using technology and having technology not work for you, and getting direct pressure from parents about grades and education and new accountability and new standards, new curriculum. There's always something new going on, and I find that very stimulating and challenging. When I started teaching back in the mid-90s, there was such a high demand for teachers. Anybody who applied to a credential program got in. Everybody in my credential program got an internship, which means we were all working, having absolutely no experience. There were very few master teachers. I had a supervisor that saw me teach 3 times that first year. I had a principal that was in my classroom 1 time, and every principal I've ever had has given me a satisfactory evaluation. Wasn't a great teacher, but I was good. I was learning, but I really had to learn on my own. Not the best way to do that. When I first started teaching, people didn't care about, there wasn't the standards movement. There wasn't the accountability. Then came No Child Left Behind. That means I do okay, that worked. I know, that's a great picture. No Child Left Behind came in, and all of a sudden we had to be accountable for what we taught students. So then administrators, they weren't just coming into your classroom looking at you once a year, they were looking at your test scores. And if you were a good teacher, you had high test scores, high achieving students. If you're a bad teacher, you had low test scores. So, there was really, pressure to make sure your kids do well on those pretty terrible standardized tests from the state of California. And being a high school teacher, besides looking at the STAR test, there was also the Casey that I had to prepare students for. And teaching to the test became the thing to do, which was not a particularly pretty way to be doing education. What I found was the kids that had always come from the middle schools well prepared and were usually from high socioeconomic situations, they did fine. And the other ones did not, and we were very visible of having a wide achievement gap between those students But since I was working in a district that had high variability of socioeconomic status, those high kids averaged in with the low kids made us look fine. Our average looked fine. But boy, when you broke it down, you saw that we were not meeting the needs of a high percentage of our kids, even though we're a pretty high-performing district. So I made a commitment to myself when I first started teaching that I'd always teach, at least 1 or 2 classes of those kids that were not from the high level, that were not over-accelerated, but those kids that really struggled. So one kid that I'm going to tell you a story about would be Eric. Eric was in my at-risk Algebra 1 class, because that was the lowest math class we teach in that high school. And Eric was kind of not the usual kid that I would see in this class. When you give him a problem to work that he had good access to, that he could solve in his way, he'd solve it. He'd solve big problems. He'd run groups. He'd do presentations. He would just, be a star student in any math classroom. But I found after teaching Eric a little while, if I tried to get him to do something new, to apply his knowledge of what he's learned to something new, he couldn't do it. And when he couldn't do something, he became a demon. I was cursed at. The other students were cursed at. We had to deal with constant discipline on poor little Eric, who was actually a very, very bright kid, but I wasn't reaching him. So I went to another teacher that also had Eric in her class, another one of those at-risk classes, and I said, how does he perform with new things in your class? And she goes, he does fine in my class. He never acts out. He's always respectful. He always does everything that I ask. And so this teacher and I would meet occasionally, and we'd talk about Eric and what's going on with him. But this teacher was really no help for me, a veteran teacher, to figure out how to reach this kid. I needed help. Now here's the problem. As a veteran teacher, there's nobody to ask for help. You don't go to your principal, because your principal is going to say, well, this teacher is not as competent as I thought she was. And then you end up in the par situation, you end up with some kind of ding somewhere, or you end up getting a schedule that you don't like to teach because you've kind of proven yourself as somebody that can't handle every learner. So how is it that I'm expected to learn how to do new things 100% on my own, and now supposed to learn how to implement Common Core standards all on my own? Well, how do veteran teachers learn new things? The answer is we don't. We continue to teach the way we've taught before because there aren't good places for us to learn new things. Even in a district that provides a lot of professional development, what we call one-shot PD, drive-by, spray PD, you should learn the technique you've sat for 2 solid days in a workshop. You should know how to do this now. Go back to your class and do. So this kind of PD didn't work. This wasn't helping this veteran teacher. So I really tried to think of how we could make veteran teachers better. And at the same time, the district was bringing in teachers on special assignment and specialists, which we'd never had in the district before. And we started to work on trying to bring in methods that were going to improve the teaching of our veteran teachers. So, there's my Common Core slide. So, what we decided that we needed was a cultural shift. And that cultural shift was about wanting to continuously improve what we were doing. So I worked with the other teacher leaders in the district, and we'd come up with ideas, and we'd propose them to the superintendent, and we'd usually get a little money to do things. So here's some of the things that we have done, that we are continuing to do, that is methods for helping both veteran and new teachers to become great teachers. So the first thing we did was we implemented peer observations. So we'd have a week here and there where every classroom was open. And teachers would say, come on in and observe me, I'm just doing the same old thing. And then some teachers started saying, I got a demonstration lesson, come and watch this. And so you try to make it over there on your prep, or you could ask your principal for a little sub time so that you could go over and see this teacher teach. Very helpful in building trust with teachers, teachers knowing that opening their doors didn't mean that they were going to get judged because everybody had their door open. So really good first steps for us. The next thing that we did was PLCs. And with our PLCs, it's taken a while to get these implemented. There's been a lot of resistance, but we have gone through a few cycles of PLCs over the last few years, cycles of inquiry, where we actually talk about learning goals, we make common assessments, we grade common assessments together, we talk about next steps, and then we do the next steps, and then we go back to the learning goals. So we're still working a lot on implementing PLCs, but this is another way that all teachers, veterans and new, learn how to improve what they're doing. Then we brought in some peer coaches. So we had 2 language and literacy coaches, and this coming year we're going to have a 3rd. That actually go in and coach teachers if a teacher asks them to come coach them. And they work on language and literacy because we feel like that's the main thing, you know, to make sure that every teacher has a handle on language and literacy. I'm the math coordinator and the English coordinator, and I coach individual teachers as needed, but there's 70 in each one of those departments for the district, so that's a lot for the 2 of us to coach. So we don't effectively coach. I happen to coach department chairs also, so I only have to work with 7 department chairs, and we talk about, how is your department running and how is your implementation of Common Core running. So I work as a coach for them, just kind of on my own, and it's been very valuable. So this peer-to-peer, nobody's taking notes, no principals looking at us. It's just me and a department chair talking to each other about what their goals are and what their next steps are. Whoops, did one too many. So the next thing that we brought in was a bit of a solution to this one-shot professional development. So instead of doing 1, we do a series of 8, 9, 10 PDs all around the same subject. So they did a language and literacy PD last year. I did an Algebra 2 PD last year where we'd just meet time and time again. We'd have an assignment at the end to go forth and do and work and bring back student work. And we'd meet once a month or once a week, however we schedule these things. And it was completely voluntary and after school and didn't cost the district too much money. And we now had teachers that were able to do some new things, and there was accountability because these teachers had to keep coming back, and then there is some amount of monitoring when you're doing that. And the next thing that we're adding this year are instructional coaches. So this is a very expensive thing for the district, but we've shown that we can have some ideas as teacher leaders that can improve what we're doing. So the district has kind of decided it'd be okay to spend some money on this, plus they wanted to revise our evaluation system. So instructional coaches will actually be somewhat part of the evaluation system, but we won't be evaluators. But everybody who's on evaluation, and we have a cycle for veterans, a 4-year cycle, everybody has a coach. So whether you think you walk on water or whether you are a brand new teacher, you get the opportunity to be coached in what you would like to work on. So that teamed up with the series of PDs really hits a lot of people and brings a lot of help out there to us veterans who have to try to figure out what our next steps are to make our professional life better. So, back to Eric. Eric ended up at our continuation school. We graduated him. To graduate from a continuation school, Eric took classes that were really way beneath him. He was much too smart for these people, but we wanted to graduate him, so we give him really easy work. Did that prepare him for after high school? Not at all. Does that prepare him for college? He wasn't directed at college. He was at the continuation school. Here's a kid that we failed. We didn't come up with enough things to help him so that he could be interested in using that intelligence that he had to go on to college. That same year in that same class that I had Eric, I had Catherine. Catherine was a senior. She was working in my class as a teaching assistant because she wanted to be a math teacher. She was in multivariable calculus as a senior. She had never been in a class that was an at-risk type class with kids who had no skills and very little motivation. And Catherine worked diligently, harder than I've ever seen anybody work, with students, one-on-one, with small groups, not feeding them answers, but actually explaining to them. She was my partner that year for trying to get to these students as much as we could. So I bring up Catherine because yesterday I got an email from my principal at the time who said, here's an article about one of our old students in the New York Times. So I linked to this article, and here's Catherine, New York Times on Monday, and it's about suicide. Now, luckily, Catherine didn't leave us. Catherine told her story to the reporter who was reporting on other suicides at the UPenn, University of Pennsylvania. Catherine's lucky, and we're lucky, I'm lucky, that this beautiful young woman didn't leave us at the age of 21. But I think she and my student Eric have the same story. We didn't serve them well in high school. We didn't prepare Catherine for what was going to happen next. We didn't prepare Eric for what was going to happen next. And in a way, we are responsible for this. We have them for a long time, but we're not giving them the skills that they need to make it. So I say, what can you do? What can all of us do? Well, commit to your own professional continuous improvement. Don't just start thinking that you know it all, you can do it all, what you're doing is good enough. Always try to pressure yourself to do better. Find ways to formally collaborate, not just meet for a few minutes after school and do some calendaring, but formally, real collaboration. If you can get your district or your principal to pay for the collaboration time, then even better. But if you can't, after school, at lunch, work with other teachers. Work with new, work with old, find some protocols, Yes. See what you can do to make sure you stay connected to all the teachers at your site. And for Eric and Catherine, do your best to reach every student. They're all important. They're all our future. Thank you.